and I'm really happy to welcome on stage Alina and Sabine, who have been kind of really thinking and exploring like what are the main hurdles that junior developers have these days, how can we help junior developers progress and get better over time. And so with this in mind, I would like to kindly ask them to join us on stage for the wonderful session that I'm looking forward to. So please give a warm hand, and the stage is yours.
Hi everyone, it's really nice to be here.
Thank you, Vitali. So before we start, we're going to talk about hurdles as being a junior developer. But before we even introduce ourselves, we would love to know who is in the audience. So who of you have been programming for more or less than a year now? Please raise your hand if you do.
Okay, so that's like 20, maybe 30 people, okay.
And who of you are not even into programming, don't even do stuff with programming? That's a lot more.
About the same, I don't know.
No, it's more. Okay. Can I then assume that the others are meter senior developers? This talk is for you, so awesome that you're here. Well, let's introduce ourselves then. I'm Sabine. I finished a master in political science, but really had a heart for graphic design. Okay, so what are you doing here? What a way to go to programming, right? But at political science, I really like the analytical and statisticals. I did for my thesis. And after finishing that, I went into the Arts Academy, Royal Arts Academy, and followed lessons on graphic design, which also included some programming, because teachers were really fond of Python. And also a software sketch, visual sketch, I say, program which is called processing. It's really fun to play with, which was in Java, by the way. And we did a bit of HTML and CSS, of course. So that's for my background. And Alina?
So I'm Alina. I actually have a background in math. That was something that I did in college and never again. But I really like analytics, and obviously I kind of started coding about 2 years ago and getting more and more into it. So both Sabine and I guess, at the same time kind of started to make the leap from non-programmers at all to programmers. Sabine is a little more front-end, I'm a little more back-end. We met at a boot camp in Amsterdam. We're both based in the Netherlands, and then we decided to move on and kind of take our programming skills to the next level. So we joined Rails Girls, which, for those of you who might not know, is a program for women who are trying to basically change their careers from non-development to development. And you work on a project, on an open source project, for 3 months during that program. So that was our first kind of venture really into working full-time and working on code that already existed, and we contributed to. So obviously we chose this topic for a reason, and that's because we are pretty junior developers, and we have had our own hurdles and a lot of different experiences while we were doing this program and while we're trying to switch careers and find new jobs. But also we think it's really important in a professional setting. One of the biggest issues that we encounter, no matter the field, no matter whether you're coding or not coding, analytical or not analytical, it's that it's really difficult for professionals to keep each other on the same level or to think of themselves on the same level as equals when there is this huge gap of knowledge between juniors and seniors. So whether you're a designer or a coder, the juniors obviously need mentorship. The seniors obviously need to provide that type of mentorship, which is also difficult for the seniors to invest so much time. So yeah, I'll take your clicker and I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about our experience and how we think we can fix some of these problems from both sides, the juniors and the seniors. So one of the first things that comes across someone's mind when they're trying to learn coding or something like UX or design is to take a boot camp, to take one of these really intensive courses that will prepare you to be a web developer or a designer at the end. And I really liked Jared's presentation this morning, and when he talked about this idea of conscious incompetence versus unconscious incompetence. And what we find, and this is our own experience, we went to a boot camp in Amsterdam, and what we felt is when you're becoming a developer, when you're starting out from the very beginning, you're kind of in the conscious incompetence stage. You know you're going to fail, you know you don't know anything, you're a shit programmer. Then, what a bootcamp tries to do is prepare you to go out and be this amazing, junior web developer, and just basically go into that career or make the career jump. But what we find is very often the opposite happens. It prepares people in a way where they actually believe that they're competent, but they're not. Or they come out of this boot camp thinking, okay, yeah, maybe I can do this, probably I can do this. This boot camp told me I can do this, so I can just get a job and hopefully perform. This is not generally the case, at least in our experience. Boot camps are very dependent on the teacher, dependent on the mentors that you have, dependent on the peers and how much your peers can help or how much peer programming you can do while you're at this, this boot camp. So one of the very first things before even going into a boot camp that a junior developer has to decide is what language are they going to learn, what kind of things they're going to concentrate on. This is very difficult. Just from a very simple search on Google or on Reddit, you can go ahead and see all these answers, all of these people telling you what their best or preferred language is. C# is the greatest language of the web, of the world, whatever. Then you obviously haven't learned Swift. Then you have, just because you can write shitty code in PHP doesn't mean you have to. Then you have Python is by far the best language for beginners. And this is the kicker, this is my favorite one. Depends on A, your point of view, and B, what you're doing with it. How helpful is this to a junior developer or junior anyone who's trying to decide what they want to do and how to do it? You need a senior to sit down with you and go through the hundreds of languages that are actually out there to tell you which one's the best for you, what you want to concentrate on. This is very well-meant advice, but it doesn't really land. This doesn't tell me anything about how to proceed in my career. So let's say that you actually have decided, you've picked a language, you said, okay, I'm going to concentrate on JavaScript. How do I learn? I'm not going to go to a boot camp straight away. I'm just going to do a little bit of self-teaching, and then I'm going to decide if I like this, go to a boot camp, or I'm going to continue mentoring myself on my own. For those of you who are not technical or who haven't programmed before, I'm going to try to keep this very simple. Codecademy is one of the first resources that anyone tells you to try out as a junior developer. It's one of those places where you can go and take really easy courses, quote unquote, and go through a program to decide whether you like coding. This is one of the first problems on Codecademy that you have to solve. And it says, declare a variable named favorite food using the var keyword and assign it to the string pizza. Pretty self-explanatory, just make a variable, say it's equal to pizza. This is my solution to this problem. Var favorite food is equal to, or fav food is equal to pizza, and then just console log. So that just means print this on your computer. And this is the outcome. So I've solved the problem. This is the warning that I get on Codecademy once I've solved this problem. Did you declare a variable named favorite food using the var keyword? My mistake is that I mislabeled the variable fav food instead of favorite food. When you're a junior developer, there are two things that mentors really try to drill into your brain. First, be really good at naming your code. Be really good because other people will read your code. They need to understand your code. They need to know what you're talking about. Second, you need to learn how to think as a developer. You need to learn how to approach problems in different ways, how to solve problems in creative ways, how to do it different from the person next to you. Codecademy approaches the first problem really well. They say, OK, we'll teach you how to label your variables. They don't approach the second one almost at all. The problem with Codecademy is the more you do these problems and the bigger the problems become, the more rigid the solutions become. And as a coder, you want to be able to interpret your own problem and provide a different solution to your problem in a way that you understand, not in a very specific way that someone requires, which is also a double-edged sword, because in a professional setting, there might be a requirement that you really need to kind of comply by. But just as someone who's learning, it's not something you want to concentrate on. It's something that you'll say, OK, I mislabeled my variable, or you'll say, I did this wrong. I'm just going to give up. This is really boring and tedious. I need to label my variables. No, I'm just going to move on. This is another example from HackerRank. HackerRank is a resource online where you can train yourself to write algorithms, basically just solve problems. And this is one of the first algorithms that you see on HackerRank. Alice and Bob each created one problem for HackerRank. A reviewer rates the 2 challenges, etc., etc. I fell asleep during the second sentence. This is, even as a math person with all of these, brackets with 1, 2, 3s inside, I don't want to read this. I don't want to read all of this. This goes on for 2 pages before I actually get to where I can write my solution. And the kicker is that the box where you write your solution already has code in it. And this is something I legitimately did when I was even more junior than I am now, 3 or 4 months ago. I went on HackerRank and I tried to solve a problem, and I saw this code and I was like, where do I put my code? Oh, line 25. OK, well, I didn't notice that. I erased all that code. I tried to write my solution, and of course that code didn't run, because I needed that code surrounding my code, that buffer, to actually make the code execute. This is not something that is very intuitive to someone who's just trying to say, OK, I just want to write a very simple algorithm that replaces, I don't know, a letter in a word, and learn how to do that. Node documentation. Node is a language that I program in. The Node documentation is targeted towards anyone who wants to learn basically how specific functions work. Again, for those non-technical, this is a very simple function that writes into a file something else. For example, I want to write hello into a file named main.txt. So as a senior or as a mid-year developer, this is what I will see when this function is described to me on the Node documentation. File, OK, it's a file path. I can have an absolute or relative file path. Doesn't really matter. Now, I have all of these options that could go into my arguments of the function up top. I have file, data, options, callback. And for all of those, I also have options. So for file, I have string, buffer, URL, etc. Buffer, an array of bytes that will temporarily store the data that I want to write, so then it can actually get written into the file. That's nice.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, the callback, that's a function that executes at the end of my function, or at the end of when my string or whatever data I put actually gets written into the file. And then the mode, the permission type for the file that I want to write in. Is it read, write, etc.? Sabine, can you tell me what you see?
What I see? Well, I just don't know what file would mean. Would it mean like an absolute path, or well, what kind of path or name?
I think one of the biggest problems is that you see too many words, and you don't know which words are relevant, what you need to concentrate on. So you have this many words. You have the 4 options with other options. What's a buffer? I have no clue. OK, that's a word I finally know. This is probably a function that will be executed at the end of my function. As a junior developer, it's one of the early things that you learn. And then mode, I Googled this a few days ago, and the first 10 responses in Google were all super unhelpful. I had to really try to find, so you see how mode says integer, that means obviously you put a number in there, and the default is 00666. I haven't found any alternatives. In the first 10 top results in Google, I couldn't find any integers that I could actually put in my function for it to execute. This is what I want to see as a junior. I just want to see, very simply, this is the file path, this is the content I want to write, and that is the function that's going to execute at the end. So file path, content string, function. If I search for some advice, if I've started to work on a project, for example, already, I'm doing a GitHub project, and I search for advice on how to take someone's code and incorporate it into my own code. So how to combine two sets of code together. One of the ways that Git does this is Git rebase. For a junior, it's really difficult to understand. It doesn't matter if you've never heard of Git rebase. It's just a way of combining code, but it's a way that sometimes provides a lot of bugs or provides a lot of errors. As a junior, you have no idea whether or not you should be using something like this. If someone hasn't sat you down and told you that this is the way to rebase against another branch on GitHub, you won't know. So this is the first article I find. The Git rebase introduction I wish I'd had. This is the second article I find. Why you should stop using Git rebase. The first time Sabine and I tried to rebase, so combine code, our own code, with a collaborator code on our project, this is what happened. For the coders in the room, you'll understand why this is corrupt, why this is weird history. We tried to basically combine code into each other with different people 1,000,000 times, and nothing worked. And then all of our commits started blending into each other, and we had 30 commits under the same name. So in the end, we had to shut down this branch and create a completely new one and start from scratch. Unless we have someone who sits down with us and takes us through every single step of the way of how to rebase properly, we're never going to know.
So, well, we've been throwing a lot of problems to you. Not that many solutions yet. What's our point? We kind of changed the thesis of our presentation a bit. And, well, we've got one answer. It's on the screen. I don't know, some of you may recognize it. But it's actually sharing. It's Reddit, the community. And whenever you go there, for whatever question you have, there's always someone willing to help you out. We found that we were really comforted by the thought that we could reach out and there would be someone to help us. So what it all came down to for us, in the end, was what really was helpful in starting out in development is to have a good mentor or mentors on who you can kind of lean, but also who thrive, who push you farther than you would have gotten without them. And I guess that we've been very lucky also, because to join in this program, the Rails Girls Summer of Code we did together, we needed to have some coaches willing to coach us. We were newbies, didn't know where to find them. And we were lucky that Alina knew one coach who would definitely help us out. But then we reached out to Reddit community in Amsterdam, and we were asking if someone would know a coach there who would, be happy to join in for 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week approximately, we thought at that point. And there were a lot of reactions coming in, and very helpful ones as well. So someone tipped us on a manager of a really nice, how do you say it, project, which is called Hack Your Future. And this was especially for refugees that came to the Netherlands and got schooled as developers by that project. And via the manager of the project, there were some names that we could contact, and we found our second coach, Jack, via that community. So that was really awesome. Well, then we were in the project, and we needed good mentorship. So what makes you a good mentor, or what makes a good mentor? Probably you have thoughts about this yourself, and you can find it also online, what makes a good mentor. But for us, it really came down to that they really enjoyed sharing their knowledge. They were very patient also, but they would also, how do you say it? They wouldn't mind to give us twice or 3 times the answer to the same question. And that's a good skill to have as a mentor. Also, they're very passionate programmers, and they're going for their own professional goals in itself, which is for us motivating, but also good to see that you can do whatever you want if you're just going in programming and dive deeper every time you go. And also, they didn't give us a fish, but they kind of gave us a way to catch a fish. So those are really good skills to have. And we've been blessed with them, because they were patient whenever we were stuck on a problem. We had some code that was we needed to do something with time zones, and I don't know if any of you did some code with time zones, but it's a pain in the ass. I hear yes. So, you probably know where we've been, and also whenever there needed to be tested, that test was run in another time zone, so that gave us more headaches than we even had before that point. And our coach is really helpful in providing us with a piece of code where we could elaborate on and go from towards our solution in the end. We did it, by the way. But at other times, whenever Dan kind of felt that there was some knowledge that could be expanded, he also had his whiteboard marker nearby, would give us the marker, by the way, to let us solve an array problem, or he would teach us a bit on a piece of code that we were stuck on. And they were also there for us whenever we were learning a new language, another framework or databases we needed to include in the code. As a teacher, you have got a really big toolbox, so that's good to know. You can either provide your students with bullet points, because some really like to have the bullet points there, and other students, they just want to do it, go program autonomously, and go for it. And you've got like 2 other sorts of people there. There are the ones who want to dive into the documentation, read all of it before they're going to start on code. But you have also the ones who are very, very visually learners. So they kind of are supported by having infographics drawn or some other images. Emojis, for instance. So that's your toolbox. And in the end, there's a goal for this all. Because we all want to like have a future where we can grow, right? Grow from the point where we are at this point. And hopefully those who are most experienced and knowledgeable want to grow as well. And they can do that by taking some on their shoulders, so to say, some juniors, and have them look further, because they can get the knowledge that you as an expert have, and go from that point to a point where they will be challenged by what the students come back with. So some other things that we found very useful are, well, obviously documentation. That kind of Alina showed you on the node documentation is really important to write documentation on whatever you're doing, actually. So in that way, you can be a mentor as well, not physically, but just by providing a good documentation, if that's your style. Another way you could mentor others is by giving answers on Stack Overflow or be there on Reddit when people ask questions about code or anything. And what's really helpful is colleagues who write, well, as much as comments as they can on pull requests. Because they are transferring their knowledge to you, and you can also debate a bit on whether that's the solution to go for or not. Because they obviously provide feedback, but you can learn from that. So those are helpful things to do as you're a senior or meteor developer, but also if you're just starting out. Because you could help others who are not even didn't even begin with coding and make their first steps. So for those of you who are looking for a job or starting to look for a job, we came across this article online, and we do have a problem with it. Because it can be useful advice, but it wouldn't be for me or for Alina as a starting programmer. This person says that this may sound contradictory, but it's not about getting any job before you look for your job. You need to know what you want to do and where you want to work. Probably is very, very experienced, and also lucky to choose for whichever company he may, join. But we, as starting developers, we didn't have that when we were applying for jobs. It was more like having 30 applications and one coming back with an interview. So you were really lucky if you just enter a job there from that point. So some of the more experienced developers may have this kind of experience, but when you're a junior, this is not a helpful advice at all. Just go for it, I would say. At least that's what I did, and Alina as well. But for others who are hiring in this room, it's really nice to know that if you're taking on a junior in your team, that they are probably really willing to grow and humble, but also challenged by whatever there is coming their way. So for job seekers in their interviews, the best friends you can have are hypotheticals. So if you are in a technical interview or in an interview and they are asking you what a GET request is, you probably don't want to say that you don't know it. So then you can think about what you imagine is going on in a GET request. Something is sent to the web server and then something gets back. Just think aloud at those points and show your analytical skills in that way. Someone at the other side of the table will be thinking, okay, this person is thinking this through. That's interesting. So make sure to not be overwhelmed, but just say aloud what you think, because those skills are more valuable in any way than technical skills you don't have at that point or just don't know about. And if everything else fails, I'm a dog person, by the way. This is Mr. Trent. I would go to him and snuggle a bit. But Alina is a cat person, and she will definitely go to a cat cafe and have a coffee with cats. So, well, just have fun.
The best thing I found in general, technical interview, non-technical interview, looking for a job, or just taking a break when you have a mental breakdown about anything analytical or anything technical or anything pertaining to your job, just take a deep breath, all you can do is just take a deep breath, because otherwise you're just going to waste nerves that are valuable enough for you to keep for a different breakdown in the future that's more important than a job interview. You can reach us here if you feel like we can improve on our talk, or if you feel like you want to give us some advice, or if you feel like you relate and you just want someone to listen, someone to believe, whatever it might be, for juniors, for seniors.
And also, if you want to sign up as a mentor, that's possible. For the Rails Girls Summer of Code, for instance, find on the website there. Also, RubyMe is looking for coaches. I started out one time at a Rails Girls event, and then returned the other time to coach. I didn't have that much experience, but it was fun doing. So it doesn't really matter what level you have, just share your knowledge and go for it, I would say.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.